Boston, the winningest sports city this century. Each championship deriving from a plan. Join us as we discuss the next Boston Banner Blueprint with your hosts, Josh Finkel, Nick Walsh, and Nate Philbrook.
What is up, everybody? It's episode 7, Boston Banner Blueprint podcast. We're talking Bruins. We haven't done it yet. I know Nick has a lot on his mind. I'm going to send it over to Nate as he's got a few things to say.
Always want to start every episode with letting everybody know exactly where to find us. And of course, that starts on Twitter/X at Boston Banner BP, Boston Banner Blueprint on Facebook and Instagram, as well as Boston Banner Blueprint on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate 5 stars, and share with your friends and family. So for our first Bees Talk as the Banner Blueprint boys, let's get it started. Think back to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Nate. Nick, I'm pretty much just going to put it right to you here because I know you have a lot to say. So take it away.
Well, when we've done our first Red Sox podcast, when we did our first Bruins podcast, I hammered the state of the team pretty hard. Like, I was angry at them. And knowing that we were going to do this episode, how this season turned out, thought I was going to be a little bit more angry. But the mood I kind of fell on was somber. And that was simply because it feels like it's finally the end of this great Bruins era that we've come to know. Obviously, this season has not gone the way anyone has expected. Fink, I know with you being how young you are, Nate, off camera, I know we've talked about how long you've been a Bruins fan. For me, I go all the way back to the dark ages of 2003, 2004, the year of Joe Thornton's, where it just wasn't fun to be a hockey fan. I was 7, 8 years old being introduced to the game. Fell in love with the game, even though the Bruins pretty much sucked. I remember being at a buddy's house the night of Game 6 in 2008 against the Canadiens, where that was really the first night. I said 2006, but 2008, Game 6 against the Canadiens. The first night of Bruins hockey being back in the Garden, back in the playoffs, where it actually felt like a party. And then you had the Satan goal in game 5 in 2010 in double overtime. It had the summer of 2011 with the Cup, Toronto comeback in 2013, all the great memories of basically, if you want to go from April of 2008 until last year, you're going on 16, 17 years of a great run. And I think I can speak for a lot of fans that, yes, I feel like we left a few on the table. 2019, 2023 coming to mind. You can say 2013. I don't feel like that one. You lost to a great Chicago team in the middle of their dynasty. There's no shame in that. But realizing now where they are as a state of a franchise, it's kind of like, not to be too cheesy, but the quoting end game from Robert Downey Jr., part of the journey is the end. This feels like the end.
No spoilers.
The movie's been out for 6 years now. I don't think it's really a spoiler.
Just saying, there might be some listeners that haven't watched it yet.
What was the movie? Because I definitely have not
Endgame.
watched it. Oh, yeah, I've seen that. What are we talking about?
Yeah. But, and we'll get to where the Bruins go from here. But for me, it's 16, 17 years of great hockey moments, falling in love with this game, in love with this team, and knowing at least if they're going to get back to championship contention, it's going to be in my mind, a multi-year rebuild, and you might have to go back to those dark ages of 2003, 2004, where hockey season's over by December. and I hate to say it, but in order to get to where we want to get to, I think that's where this is heading. So my mood on the team, it's not so much anger, but just sadness that it's over.
I think
way to start the episode. I was going to say, way to start the episode on a high note.
That somber is about as accurate. Go ahead, Fink.
Dark or dull in color or tone. Back to you, Nate.
Thank you for the explanation there. So I think somber is probably. Go ahead.
Definition.
You're correct. Yeah, my bad. But that opening monologue there, certainly a somber moment to start the episode. But I can't help but agree with you that it definitely does feel like a changing of the guard here. When you have the guys like the Patrice Bergeron, the David Krejcis, the Tuukka Rasks, the Zdeno Charas that have all left over the last handful of years, there's really, that Marchand's pretty much it from those real big bad Boston Bruins teams of the early 2010s. Marchand's pretty much the last guy left, and so while it's not the team of the past, our job as the Blueprint is to kind of lay a groundwork of what the Blueprint's going to look like going forward. And I do think that there's a lot of pieces here to like. It's just a matter of finding the right team chemistry and fitting the rest of the roster out in a meaningful way that right now is currently not a very balanced lineup. And that's going to be my main takeaway from probably this episode is we need a more balanced roster. And that's where I feel as though the Bruins have been best of over the last handful of years, is when they've been deep from first to fourth line. And so as we get into a little bit of this episode and some of the guys that we might target or some of the things that we could see upcoming, that's going to be my main takeaway, is continuing to balance out this roster.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm always optimistic. I don't have a lot of optimism for the Bruins, unfortunately, but as the co-host of the Blueprint, I'm always for a little bit of a rebuild or a retool, whatever we want to call it. I like setting a plan and see what they can do, the paths they can take to maybe get back to where we want them to be. Maybe not 2023 levels, the historic levels, as we talked about at length this morning. But I think there is a way. I mean, we're going to talk about it later, but with the cap spike, I think we could talk about that, and that'll be a good thing. But there's some paths we could take. I'll talk a little bit more later about what I'd like to see them do at the deadline. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Like you said, it is kind of somber because I am a little younger, but I did see like the 2011 Cup. I was old enough to remember that. And the 2013 loss, I do remember that a little bit. But I mean, it does suck because obviously guys have been leaving on their own the past couple of years. Like it's one, then it's the next guy. Krejci came back. That was fun. But yeah, it is somber, I would say. It is somber, but there's fun things to look forward to, like Chuck McAvoy and Pasternak and your guy, whatever his name is. Nick loves him, that guy, Jonas. But that's where I stand.
Jonas Corposalo.
Jonas Corposalo, that's it. Thank you.
I just said the backup goalie is like reason 678th on my list of complaints with this current team. So I'm not going to lose too much sleep over the backup goalie.
Well, Nick,
like I said, trying to save money. So trying to save money wherever I can. So I'm all for a good blueprint.
Why don't you kick us off and kind of get into your first grievance of what you feel as though is the largest need for a change with this current Bruins team?
If I had my wish, it would be that the Jacobs sell the team, but that'll never happen.
It's always about the owners with you.
Yeah, this guy hates families. He hates families. If you're listening with your family, we're sorry. He hates families.
The Jacobs family, not so much as sports owners, because they have spent to the cap since Jeremy helped facilitate the lockout in 2004. He was one of the main owners that was for the lockout. But you talk to a generation of Bruins fans that are older than us that lived through the Cam Neely and Ray Bourque years, going all the way back to Bobby Orr. the Jacobs have owned the team since the 70s. And for the first 25, 30 years, they were absentee owners. They didn't care. Even now, you never see Jeremy Jacobs. I know he's 130 freaking years old as it is now, but you don't see him or Charlie at the games. They're in their condo or mansion, whatever, in Buffalo. They don't care. As people, there's a lot of grievances with them as people, going all the way back to even the COVID season, during the height of COVID, where the league shut down. Do you realize there was only, I believe, two? There may have been three NHL teams in the whole league that the owners didn't pay their stadium staff. 20, how many teams are in the league? 30, 32, whatever. The other 20-something owners made sure that their stadium staffs were taken care of. Jeremy Jacobs was one of the ones that refused to pay his workers. So if you just want a little bit of an insight of how the man is, he wasted Ray Bork's career. If you want to keep it to hockey, there's a lot of issues with the Jacobs family that I think stem from this, where if you want to talk about where the team is right now, why there's really no pipeline of talent coming up through Providence. All he cares about, he doesn't care about winning a championship. He cares about getting those 2 to 3 home playoff games in round one each year. So I do believe it's a mandate from ownership that you got to sell all out, even if the team wasn't ready to compete in like a 2016 or 2017, where I think the trade for Rick Nash and those trade deadlines really set the franchise back. And we can talk about Don Sweeney and the 2015 draft all you want, but the issues with the team stem from Jeremy Jacobs and Charlie Jacobs, and you'll never convince me otherwise.
So just as a synopsis, it's Robert Kraft's problem for the Patriots, John Henry's problem for the Red Sox, whoever is going to own the Celtics over the next handful of months. It's going to, it's a clean, it might be a fresh start, clean slate with you, but it might be a slippery slope for you.
No, he's going to hate him automatically because he
Jeremy
just
Jacobs
loves win.
show of being incorrect or wrong, which, I mean, don't get me wrong. The COVID example is certainly an example that you would like to see your owner step up to the plate and make a meaningful impact against a very, very unfortunate situation that we all lived through, that, you know, you have these very, very wealthy individuals that could make an impact in their communities and choose not to. That's disheartening. But from keeping it strictly hockey, they've put at least during my fandom, they've put a very competitive team on the ice year in and year out. And so, you know, I think that moving into some of the grievances that I've seen a lot of people make, one of which is not the backup goalie there, Fink, but I'm going to start with one thing that I've seen that I've recognized as going back to 2019 when they're the one win away of winning the cup. You know, really what made that team different is they went 4 lines deep, and you knew that their fourth line matched up against the fourth line of the other team, that they had the advantage. And similarly for the third line. And so I don't think that that's too far off from when you have a starting roster that starts with Elias Lindholm centering, David Pastrnak, and then another winger. You have the option of building out a deep roster that then could be a more balanced approach and give yourself an advantage in more than just 20 minutes a night, with being a one-line team, which seems to be the trap that they've fallen into. With they have the elite goal scorer in Pastrnak, but after that, it's a bunch of middling guys. With Coyle has never been the goal scorer. Elias Lindholm that they signed this offseason, he's never been the goal scorer. He's always been a good facilitator, but if he has nobody to facilitate it to, and obviously Marchand's at the tail end of his career. So it's that would be what I would like to see, whether it's this trade deadline or going into the offseason. It's a little bit more of a balanced approach of spreading the money out, getting some veterans in here that can make an impactful difference, and balancing the lines out.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just I'm not like an 82 guy. I don't watch a single game, but I pop my head in the door here and there, see how the Bees are doing, and it just seems like they're always, besides the pasta line, they're always under talented. They don't have speed. They don't lack toughness, like you said a little while ago. The big bad Bruins, it's so far off from that. They don't have that edge, and I don't know, like. I mean, I don't watch a lot of other teams in the league, so I don't know other teams that play with that type of play. But I know for the Bruins, like Big Bad Bruins, that's not us. We're pretty soft. We don't score goals at all. And yeah, that's me.
Well, if you look at the construction of this current roster, it was really from the goalie out. Of the Swayman negotiations were largely fumbled coming into this season, and it prevented him from having a normal offseason. Which has then led, in my opinion, to a slower start than what we were accustomed to from Swayman, coming off a red hot postseason that he basically carried the team as far as they went. But if you look at having Swayman and then having a key addition in Zadorov, that he was supposed to be the lockdown defender that brought that grit, brought that toughness, and brought a guy that he'd drop the gloves with anybody, that they haven't had since like Kevin Miller, basically. But if you look at Zadorov and McAvoy and Carlo and Lindholm, they were supposed to be a defense first team that then led to hopefully more offensive hockey and from the blue line in. But it hasn't shaken out that way. Zadorov has not been that good. Swayman has been less than what we had hoped when he signed on the dotted line for his big extension. And so that's where I think, again, the roster building side of things in today's NHL, particularly in the regular season, it's about scoring goals, not preventing them.
Yeah, and you touch on with being a team that's built from the goalie out, which every great Bruins team always was. Even in our lifetime, 2011 was. This franchise transformed basically overnight when I wouldn't say overnight, but basically when we signed Chara back in 2006, where we finally started to build it back from the blue line out. But the game's evolved. You got to be faster. You got to be more offensive, skill-based, which that's why you gave Charlie McAvoy the $9.5 million AAV extension, because he was supposed to be your cornerstone defenseman, but also bring that offensive spark to him from the blue line. And I think of all the disappointments of this season, McAvoy might be near the top of my list, if not at the top, because he's just not living up to that contract yet. There's still some time, but that's the biggest.
Well, since his sophomore season, when he burst onto the scene in the playoffs, and then he had his real rookie campaign, that following season when he had that real ascension into, okay, this guy might be a legit superstar. I mean, it's been a pretty steady, not necessarily decline, as he always plays at a high level, but it's like, when is this guy going to reach the potential that he shows flashes of, and then have a sustained, period of that that super high ceiling kind of player? And we just haven't seen that.
Right. And for a guy that has 9.5 million AAV, you need him to be the Makar type of defenseman, and he just hasn't been. It's like he's hit a plateau. And when is he going to break out, like you said, and we just haven't seen it? I think I saw that you put your hand up.
I have a thought, but I don't know how good of a thought it is, so you guys let me know, okay? Is he more of an offensive defender, or is he like more of like your defender? Like, what's more of his game? Tell me.
Well, and see, that's it. He was supposed to be the do it all kind of guy.
But now is he like just kind of like do it okay?
Go ahead, Nick.
Like, he's not a bum or anything like that. I don't want to make it out like he is, but when you sign a guy to, what was it, 8-year, $9.5 million per year contract extension, you're banking on him to being a Norris caliber type of defenseman, a guy that's going to be the best defender in the league year in and year out. And he hasn't come close to it. And that's the thing. Like, if he was making Zadorov money 5 and 5 or whatever the Zadorov contract was, he would be a bona fide steal. But it's just the value that you're getting on the ice to what you're paying him just doesn't equate. And that's where the issue lies with McAvoy.
Nick, is he more of an offensive guy or is he more of a defensive guy? I know that coming into the league, he was more of an offensive guy, but in my opinion, that was because had more to do with the fact that he was paired with Zdeno Chara when he came into the league, that he got to be that offensive guy. Since he became the dude, he's been good at both, but not great at either. Does that help answer your question, Fink?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. So what I'm trying to get at is I'm wondering what if they paired him with more of a defensive, grittier guy? Is he paired with Zadorov? Or isn't he with Borai right now?
When healthy, he's been with Lindholm. But they've mixed and matched throughout. But through the 3 different coaches that McAvoy's had between Cassidy, between Montgomery, and between Sacco, a common theme is they always say, we want Charlie to shoot more. We're at our best when Charlie is aggressive and on the offensive end and shoots. But the issue is McAvoy doesn't do that a whole lot of the time. So he's supposed to be this offensive defenseman that is also very solid and very caliber on the back end, but he's just not tapping into that. So to answer your question, he's supposed to be an offensive defenseman, but he's just not playing like it when he has.
Do you think that maybe that's due in part because he hears the noise like throughout the Boston media is that they don't play defense, they give up all these goals, so maybe he's taking more pride in trying to play defense and prevent goals, and they can't even score goals to begin with. I know that, but I'm just trying to see all the paths here for my boy Chuck.
If it was
maybe that could be a case because I don't know.
If it was just this year and with one defensive matchup partner, I would say that's a possibility, but you're going through multiple seasons now with multiple coaches where it's the same issue no matter who's on his left side. So I think it's a Charlie McAvoy issue. I don't think it's a personnel or a coaching issue. I think this is simply Charlie McAvoy doesn't want to shoot the puck for whatever reason.
Well, and I mean, that very well could be because we very well could be talking about the next captain of the Boston Bruins, depending on how the Marchand negotiations. Depending on how the Marchand negotiations go this summer. But this is a guy that he's really, again, he burst on the scene during the playoffs when he was coming out of college, and when he became that first real, like, okay, this guy he can really play. He really took the Boston fans by storm, and he embraced it. And so I don't think that the moment's too big for him. I think it's just a matter of like building the team in a way that aids to his skill set. Because again, when he was paired with Chara, he was fantastic. And I know that they've tried matching him with Carlo in the past, who is the defensive defenseman. But nobody's going to be the replacement of Zdeno Chara. So that's where he needs to take his game to another level in order to be able to reach that pinnacle that we're talking about. I think we all can agree that we think he has it in him. It's just a matter of getting it out.
Absolutely. Like, he's one of my favorite players on the team. Like, anyone watching on the YouTube channel, I'm wearing his jersey right now talking about him. And so it pains me to rail on this guy like I have been, because he is supposed to be the next great Bruin. Like, he was supposed to be up there with Chara. He was supposed to be up there maybe not Bork or level, because you can't expect anyone to be that, but he was supposed to be that next great generational Bruins cornerstone defenseman. And he just hasn't been yet. And to your point, Nate, he has it in him. Is he ever going to realize that potential?
Yeah, I mean, not to rail on the guy at all, but geez Louise, Chuck, we need you to pick it up. How old is he?
Like 20. I don't have his Wikipedia page right up in front of me.
Wikipedia. I could edit that. I have Wikipedia
No.
Pro. Hold on, I got it right here.
PT from the top rope.
But I believe I'm
27.
actually older than him. 27.
27. So, yeah. Well, yeah, you're 45, so it's not a surprise.
Nick ages in dog years every episode we have. He was in his early 30s last episode. He's in his mid 40s.
Oh, I swear he had more hair last week. I swear he had more hair last week.
Why do you think?
Yeah, keep it on.
My lord, dude!
Keep the scally cap on,
dude. I think our content on YouTube is getting flagged because of your hair. That's why no one's seeing
it.
Lack of hair.
Yeah. So my apologies.
All right, moving on. We're gonna keep this train rolling. So we have with trade deadlines coming up. We've seen a couple of trades already in the NHL and some potentially buyer's remorse there on Carolina's part, as it has not worked out well with Rantanen so far. But do you see this Bruins team as currently constructed being buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? Or are they going to pull a Craig Breslow special and be both or neither at the same time?
Yeah, I'll go first because that's my answer. It's gonna be a mix of both. They're gonna sell off some guys. I think they're gonna it's gonna be a retool. I think for the end of the year, it's gonna be guys probably cheap expiring contracts that they can let walk. I mean, they're gonna bring guys in. It's gonna be buy and sell like we see with the Red Sox every deadline. They're not gonna say it probably, but I think that's what we're gonna see. I don't know if you want to get into names yet, but names or no names?
No names yet. No names
Preliminary talks. I like that. All right. But yeah, that's my take. I think they're just going to be just right in just whatever they give. They take a call. They're like, hey, that's what I think. Nick?
I think if Sweeney and Cam had their way, they would be sellers if they had the assurance from ownership that, hey, your jobs are safe. Because Cam mentioned just a couple weeks ago that they're coming to a crossroads, that there's two paths that they can take. So they realize it. But if Charlie and Jeremy from Buffalo are going to be mandating, hey, we need at least 2 home playoff games no matter what, then I think they take that approach where, unfortunately, that they're going to try to add to a sinking ship. But I think most fans that realize where they are as a state of the organization, Don Sweeney and Cam Neely would choose to be sellers. I would choose to be a seller if you didn't hear, if you couldn't tell by my opening monologue. But only time will tell.
I'm of the opinion that I don't see buyers in the blueprint. I don't necessarily see sellers in the blueprint. However, I would lean that way. I see this team, if they are going to make a push for the playoffs, I see them as a mostly stay pat kind of trade deadline. I think it's going to be pretty uninspiring, to use a word from last episode, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? This team has really hit a new stride over the last 10, 6-3-1 over the last 10, and they have been putting the puck in the back of the net in a pretty meaningful way. And so it's not as if this team can't do it, but it's a matter of what does this look like going forward? Because obviously now we have some serious, commitments to players for not only long years, but also high AAV to based off of this offseason. You have the Zadorov, you have the Elias Lindholm. They're they're locked into those guys now for a while. And so who are some names that you guys are looking at that, they could either be targeting or looking to shed if they are going to be sellers?
I think number one on my list that they would look to shed is Trent Frederick. Guy is coming up as an unrestricted free agent this summer. Are you really going to pay another third line winger $5 million a year? Like, that's one that Don needs to take a good hard look at. Like, are we going to lose him for nothing? Or can we get at least some draft capital or another meaningful player with term back for him? But Trent Frederick is the easy one to look at and be, if you're going to sell off any portion of the team, it's going to be Frederick. If you want to go all in and sell, I think you do right by Brad Marchand and ask him if he wants a shot at another title and see if a contender will take him on, because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent guy. So if he's not wanting to take that Bergeron or Chara role where you basically go year to year with a lower AAV, you do right by Marchand and ship it to somewhere that has a title chance, because right now it's not in Boston.
Yeah, that was number one on my list. Another name, Justin Brazeau. He probably wouldn't get us much of a return, but another unrestricted free agent guy, probably going to lose him. And for a playoff team, not a bad guy to bring on. He's a big guy. He's got 20 points on the year, 10 goals, 10 assists. That's how they do hockey points, right? That would be,
yes.
Okay. Just making sure. Just making sure. But yeah, so that's a name I could see. And then Nate, do you have a name?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to piggyback off of the Trent Frederick and just kind of give some more context to that, because if you look at the kind of player that Trent Frederick is he is that third line winger. He's a guy that brings a certain level of toughness to any line that he's on, and he's a guy that in the playoffs that you're going to want on the ice, because not only is he have a potential of putting one in the net, he also has the potential of dropping the gloves with anybody on the ice. And so as a unrestricted free agent, I think that they kind of fit that need, or filled that position with the Mark Kostelic extension that they announced a couple weeks back. And he's a guy that he's making peanuts compared to what Frederick's going to get on the open market. And so Kostelic being a center / wing, but he also brings that edge, the guy that they got along with your boy Fink Korpisalo in the Olmark deal. But he's worked out to be a pretty decent player for them, and a guy that I think that fits that he's got a little bit of an edge to him, a little nastiness. And so I think that trading from Frederick, or even our first round pick from 2019, it might have been later than that, but Johnny Beecher, a guy that as a first round pick you expected to have a little bit more impact than being a pretty consistent fourth line player. And so that's a guy that I'd be looking to get rid of. And then if you do want to really start shedding some salary, then you have Charlie Coyle that's making $5.25 for another year. So he would likely bring a larger return, in my opinion, because of his experience, because of his playoff resume, and then of course that he's got a little bit of term left on his deal.
Coyle is definitely an interesting one too, because the timeline of where the Bruins are and looking to retool or rebuild, whatever term you want to use. He's 32 now, 33.
Yep.
Finish up this year and then one more year for his current contract. He's been a great Bruin, 2 good playoff runs. But if you're looking to get capital back for him, this deadline, this offseason is when to move him if you're going to move him. But that's an interesting one to bring up, because he isn't one of the upcoming free agent guys, but better a year early than a year too late.
Yes, but also to that point, if there is a threat of us losing Marchand, whether it is to another team or retirement in the offseason, having a guy like Charlie Coyle in the locker room, I think would go a long way because of his leadership, because of his persona that he brings. And I think that he would be certainly not a captain in line, but a veteran leader that you need to have to be able to build a contender going forward. So I'm certainly not advocating for them shipping Charlie Coyle. I want to be very clear about that because I love Coyle, but I think that in terms of what you could give away to what you could get, I think he's probably one of the more intriguing names on the current roster.
What about Zaka?
Zaka's another guy. I mean, he has even more term. He has 2 years after this one, and he's a lower AAV at 4.75. So, and he has that versatility that Coyle brings as well. Zaka, coming from that was the Hala trade, right, with the Devils.
Yeah.
That
Yes,
ended
sir.
up working horrendously for them. That Zaka really came into his own as a Bruin, and I think that centering a line with Pastrnak, they had a lot of chemistry. But again, this year, that chemistry, whether it was the fault of Jim Montgomery that he was basically checked out from the beginning of the season, or now making the transition mid-season to Joe Sacco, I mean, who knows what ended up happening there? But the chemistry that was once is no longer.
I have another name. I would say, unless Nick, did you have anything to add?
No. Go ahead,
Okay.
Fink.
I want to be nice to you. I feel sometimes I'm too mean to you, especially in the group chat. So I'm trying to build some camaraderie between us right now.
Jesus, just go.
So I would say Brandon Carlo if we were going to fully blow this thing up, but that's probably not going to happen. So I'd say Andrew Peak. He's making $2.75 million. He blocks shots, takes the body well. He's a solid player. We got him at last year's deadline. That's another name I could see them moving. I don't know what type of value he would bring in, but making almost $3 million, and you know how much I hate $3 million. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't hate that idea. I don't know if a roster that would be pushing for the playoffs and therefore buyers at this point, like strictly buyers at this point, would be interested in a guy like Peak. But certainly if the phone rings for Peak, I certainly wouldn't hang up. But I don't know that he adds the kind of value that, to me, on a championship contending team, he seems like a healthy scratch during the playoffs kind of guy. That
but
be just me.
The guy that brings that type of toughness and some depth, that you can't have enough depth in the playoffs.
I completely agree. Absolutely. However, on a healthy roster, he's not a guy that's necessarily going to crack. And at very least, he's going to be a third line defenseman or a third pairing defenseman.
I agree. But now I'm out.
Yeah, he's more of a complementary piece at the deadline. He's not the difference maker that whichever team is pushing for the cup is going to be bending over backwards to go out and grab. It's going to be he's going to be like the Marcus Johansson of 2018 or 2019, whatever year that was for us, where it was just we're buying at the deadline, but it's a guy that's not really going to break the bank and really put us over the top.
Which, I mean, that Johansson deal was supposed to be a lot better than it was, but anyway, a name that I see not necessarily during the trade deadline here this year, but possibly offloading during this offseason is a Jonas Korpisalo trade. As he's certainly, he's now in the position that we find ourselves, right? Looking back to last year and even the last 2 years, to have Ullmark and Swayman on every single night, holy cow, were we just so spoiled. And I don't know if Bruins fans just became accustomed to having two absolute studs between the pipes, but Korpisalo is a guy that has built a lot of. I'm seeing you that Fink. That's what it's called. We're calling hockey terms here. So So Korpisalo's rebuilt a lot of his value in 18 games. He has a 2.84 GAA, goals against average. And to me, that's the statistic I'm looking at for a goalie, because that obviously takes into account the defense that plays in front of him. Saves and save percentage, in my opinion. If you have a shit defense, then you're gonna face a lot of pucks. And so obviously, as we just talked about, this was supposed to be a defense first roster. And so Korpisalo in theory should not be facing as much as he would if he were in Buffalo or wherever. But so he's a guy that's rebuilt some value. He's on a 3x3 contract after this year, and he could be a pretty intriguing backup somewhere else. Then it opens up the door for like a Brandon Bussey or the guy that you posted about today, Fink.
Michael, my guy Michael.
Yeah. And so it opens up the door for a potential Swayman backup from within.
Yeah, I think when that Ullmark trade happened back last summer, and we saw Korpisalo being in the package at $3 million, we all thought to ourselves, why? Like, the point of trading Ullmark was that you weren't going to invest as much money into the goaltender position. And last year, he statistically was the worst goalie in the league.
Thank you, goalie Bob.
I was just about to say thank you to goalie Bob, in the sense of he's actually turned him into a pretty solid backup goalie. I don't think really anyone can complain about Korpisalo this year of what we were expecting for what we're getting. He's still not $3 million backup goaltender, but he's far from the worst in the league. He's serviceable. So if you can offset that salary,
he's awful. I don't know how you keep saying you just keep having this guy's back. You hate families, but you love this guy. 12th worst goalie in the last 10 years of the Bruins.
No.
I'm get into the numbers.
Nate just said 2.84 goals against this year. That's better than Swayman. So
Swayman, I don't think the Swayman talk is fair. We know you see it in baseball. Guys that wait super long in the offseason, to get a contract, they don't play well that first year. Like, I'm not worried about Swayman. He'll be fine.
I'm not worried about Swayman in the long term either, but I'm also not worried about a backup goalie on a team that's borderline playoffs, if not going to be tanking. It's like Nate said, if a team's willing to take on that contract, absolutely. But I'm also not too concerned over a backup goaltender when there's plenty of other holes on this roster.
Could use that $3 million to patch some of these holes.
Absolutely. But right now, coming up to this offseason, they already have $24 million in cap space. They had $20 million in cap.
30 with 3 more.
Yeah, but
you said it. You did say, like, when you saw the $3 million, it's why pay that? You have goalie Bob, and you have some solid goalie prospects that aren't going to make $3 million. So why, just get rid of the guy?
I'm not advocating.
I know you're not making the case to keep him. I know you're not. I'm just saying, in general, why have him now?
Right. Because I'm not going to give him away for just nothing. If some team's willing to give you something, absolutely. But I'm also not going to be like, hey, we'll attach a prospect to this guy, just get him off our roster. I'm not doing that. I'm not giving him away.
Our prospects aren't good anyway.
I was just going to say, and getting draft capital, while it seems intriguing, it's a matter of what you do with it. And their track record with draft capital has been absolute garbage dating all the way back to 2007 to 2015 draft. And that's a decade now.
Yeah. So where the state of the team is, I'll ask this question. Is Sweeney the right guy for the job going forward?
I would say building an NHL roster, he's been fairly successful at putting high quality talent on the NHL roster. Building a pipeline of prospects and a blueprint to what the next core of the Boston Bruins is, there needs to be some level there that he's no longer in charge of, because quite frankly, I mean, the Fabian Lysells of the world, that he's been the top prospect in the organization since Finkel was 5 years old. So, you can't
like the Yankees with Jason Dominguez.
Yes. You can't keep relying on these kids to come up and make impact plays like you can on other franchises, because they haven't turned out the way that you need them to. And so the player selection and development from high school or juniors on has just been pretty bad. And so that's my answer is, as the GM of the NHL team, yes. As the player development or any sort of scouting department, there needs to be some overhaul there.
And that's where I was going to go with it too. If it's in terms of this upcoming week or two with the trade deadline and the first thing this offseason, if you're truly going to strip this thing down to where it's only like the Pasternaks and the McAvoys and the Swaymans of the world that are left, he's been fairly decent on his hockey trades. So I trust him in the sense of getting proper value back of what he's giving out. But the moment those trades are done and it gets time for the draft and scouting and all that, show him the walking papers. Like, get someone new in there to do that, because he hasn't been able to build any sustainable pipeline up through. McAvoy is basically his one guy that he's brought in. Like, Pastrnak goes back to Chiarelli's day, if I'm not mistaken. But there really hasn't been that influx of talent coming up through Providence. And if that's the route that we're going to be heading to sooner rather than later, then it's sooner rather than later that Sweeney needs to be shown the door. I think.
Yeah, fire him, get him out of here. And I would bring in Jason Botterill. He was the GM of the Sabres. He was assistant GM with the Kraken.
I'm already out. If he's a GM of the Sabres, I'm already out.
No, can you let me finish, please? He's credited for the Kraken's fast start since they are an expansion franchise. He's credited with their fast start in the league, not being just like a poop stick franchise right out of the gates. So that's just a name to keep in mind.
I hear you there, and however the way the expansion franchises work, if their draft, it does bode well for a fast start. I mean, looking at the Golden Knights from a couple years ago, I mean, they were in the Stanley Cup in year 2, and so if you
just wanted,
it gives you an opportunity to use some terms that are familiar to my industry, like buy low and then sell high on some real value players that are unfortunately like afterthoughts to their current rosters. And so again, I'm pro Sweeney when it comes to like the Taylor Hall trade or the trading Ryan Donato for Charlie Coyle? Was that the deal?
Yeah.
And, Donato was supposed to be the next like sniper that was coming through the system of he was going to be a 40-goal scorer. And then he's just never turned into much. I mean, he's been a solid NHLer, but he's not been anywhere close to what Charlie Coyle's been for the Bruins. So,
and you touched on earlier with the Zacha trade too. Like, his trades have been fairly good. There's been a few misses like Rick Nash and those type of things. But for the majority of trades, he's been
Taylor
good,
Hall
if not.
Taylor Hall is another good one.
Yep. Bertuzzi? Was Bertuzzi a free agent or a trade?
Bertuzzi was a trade.
Bertuzzi was a good trade.
Yeah, it didn't work out as well as.
He was pretty good. I'm pretty sure Bertuzzi was pretty good for us. The year when he left, he was awful. Because that's when Zacha burst on and had more points than him when he went to the Maple Leafs. And now he's on the Blackhawks.
Yes, he is. But I don't think.
Let me look at these numbers.
I wouldn't necessarily consider the Bertuzzi trade a overwhelming success, particularly the fact that he completely gave up in the defensive zone. So
he and Pasta, though, I mean, let me look at some numbers. I'll get back to you. 1 second.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say the Bertuzzi trade to me, I thought was basically a wash in the sense that you gave up a first-round pick for him. And I love everything that Bertuzzi brought as a hockey player. But like you say, he fell off in the defensive end. And I think that year leaves a sour taste in most Bruins fans' mouth, the way that year ended. So it might be unfair to Bertuzzi in that sense. Like, I was all for bringing him back if we could, but where we were in cap jail after the end of that year, it didn't make financially any sense to do it. But I wouldn't say that trade in a nutshell was a loss, and I wouldn't say it was a win. It was basically Don Sweeney giving Bergeron in this core its one last real kick at the can, and it was the players that let Don Sweeney down in 2023.
Nick, have you ever thought about a career in politics?
I wouldn't vote
That's
for him.
That's an insult.
You're very good. You're very good at answering the question without answering the question. That's been the common theme over the last couple episodes.
I like it though. He likes to yap. See, I thought Bertuzzi was pretty good. I mean, 16 points in 21 games. Is that bad?
It's not bad by any stretch. Like I said, and
you don't need the guy to be a lockdown defender.
Look at his playoff numbers. That's where he completely disappeared.
Yeah. So did everyone. That's what guys do in Boston.
So, quick, and simple answers. Do you believe this team's going to be a seller at the deadline?
I hope so, but I think ownership's going to get in the way and say they got to make a push for the playoffs. So I think they're going to be minor buyers. They're not going to go trying to get some sort of blockbuster. I think they're going to add around the edges.
Think?
I think we may have lost Fink.
I think Finkel's frozen. So to answer my own question.
I'm still here.
Oh, all right, he's back.
Oh, he's back.
So Finkel, are they going to be buyers or sellers?
Both.
Okay.
And I'm the politician.
I'm of the opinion. I'm of the opinion that they stay pat. That I don't. To your point, Nick, I don't see them making any major moves one way or another. Particularly because the ones that would make the most sense and that make the most impact are probably contracts that aren't going to be moved during this trade deadline. But I don't. Yeah, I just don't see happening one way or the other. It's going to be a slow retool or slow rebuild just because of the draft capital that we have left and the contracts that we have now.
And you say that, but that brings up a good point and next jumping off point where the NHL just this week may have thrown the Boston Bruins a lifeline in these new cap numbers where we may not be in for that long, dreadful rebuild. There may be a way out and involves spending money, but just if no one listening has heard, the next couple of years, the NHL has already put out what the cap numbers will be. And for context, this year it was roughly $92 million. Next year, it's moving up to $95 million. But in the summer of 2026, that number jumps all the way up to 104. And then the following year, it jumps again to 113. So you're talking about within 3 off seasons, the cap goes up by $20 million. Like,
that's the Disney effect.
Exactly.
That's the moving all of the games to ESPN.
Yep. And so that might be a lifeline in terms of how the Bruins navigate this retool or rebuild, whichever term you want to use, where you can bring in some talent, impactful talent, to get back to true playoff contention and hopefully start building this pipeline through Providence sooner rather than later. But that'll also who you target during those off seasons. Like by that point, Marchand's going to be gone. Carlo's going to be gone unless you re-sign him. Coyle, Poitras is going to be on his RFA contract. But you really need another impactful center because Elias Lindholm, if you're going to be a Stanley Cup team, Elias Lindholm can't be your number one center. He has to be number 2.
I
And
don't know. I agree with that. They need to raise the floor of their center, but I don't know that they need to. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say no if they go out and get a Connor McDavid, but I'm not saying that this team can't be successful with Elias Lindholm as their number 1 center.
well, who's going to be the number 2 center? Because I don't think Matty Poitras is going to be a Stanley Cup caliber second line center within the next 3 years.
I agree, and I do think that he came up last year, showed some flashes, and then obviously had the season-ending shoulder injury. And for a guy of his frame type, it has not gone well in terms of regaining that strength and being able to truly compete at the NHL level quite yet. I do think that that's on the table for him, but to your point, not as a second line center on a competing team.
Right.
So
if you're talking about my dream, realistic dream, like I know McDavid's up for a contract in 2026. You're not getting Jesus on skates in Boston. I hate to break it to you. He's going to get 15, 16 million per year with this new cap jump, without a doubt. He's making 12 now. Best player in the league since Gretzky. I don't think that's a debate. But my dream...
Ovechkin? Sidney Crosby?
I'm
just saying about greatest player since Gretzky.
Jonas Corposalo?
No, but my dream is they get Eichel that summer, where if McDavid doesn't re-sign with Edmonton, which I'm sure he will. Well, they just gave Draisaitl his contract. I think they won't let McDavid go out the door. But Eichel's up for a contract that summer. I throw the bag at him, and now your center depth, your first 3 lines anyway, are and Lindholm, Eichel, 1-2, flip-flop, and I don't care. Poitras as your third line center. Now you're really talking in terms of that depth up the middle. And then you figure out the wing spots from there. But if you had the center line of Eichel, Lindholm, and Poitras, and worry about the fourth line and then the wingers, now you're talking. And now you playing hockey in May, and if not June, is a realistic possibility again. But that's 2 off seasons away. And if the Jacobs can withstand 2 years without home playoff revenue, you might have a shot. But it always comes back to the Jacobs, as you can tell with me.
I think I have a name to fill out one of your wing spots with. Claude Giroux. I know he's old, but hear me out. 79 points 2 years ago, 64 last year. What do you think?
And he'll be on AARP in 2 years.
Okay, but he clearly can. He does something what we lack.
I just don't think the timeline matches up.
Yeah, Giroux would be he'd kind of be at that stage of his career. He would be like the Rick Nash trade or the Foligno trade from a couple years ago. That savvy veteran that you're going to get on the third line that was formerly a number 1 on his team, and
the Yager years, the Yager years of the Bruins.
All right, what about Nikola Ehlers from the Jets? Skates like the wind.
He's always a pain in the ass during this postseason too. I mean,
that's a guy you hate to play against, but love to have on the organization, and that's a good blueprint setter for Big Bad Bruins.
Yeah, and he always makes the Metro Division his bitch during the playoffs, and so that would be a guy. Again, I'm of the belief that rather than throwing 12, 13 million at Eichel or whatever it would take to get an Ehlers, which I don't know it would be that expensive, but I'm of the opinion that if they go and they take a bunch of $5 million players rather than 112, it would serve them well in terms of, again, balancing out and becoming a more dangerous top to bottom team. Because when you are that, you look at it from the Florida Panthers last year, that you look at that one line that you're relying on scoring, and then they get shut down by Sam Bennett, it's not going to be pretty, and you're going to get steamrolled in the playoffs. So that's my blueprint, if you will, of I want to see them go out and spread the wealth and become a deeper top to bottom team. So I think so. We've for our opening Bruins episode, we've gone through a lot, but also not a whole lot, as throwing a lot of names out there, giving a lot of opinions. I know that PT's yelling at us that we're at the hour mark and ready to wrap. So do you guys want to move into trivia, or any last thoughts before we give our opportunity to get some free Boston Banner Blueprint merch?
I'm ready for trivia.
I was going to say, I think I got
all
my. I was going to say, I think I got all my take. I think I got all my takes out there. So
beautiful. Well, moving into this episode's trivia question is: what rookie Bruins winger scored 4 goals in the 2009 NHL Young Stars game on his way to game MVP honors? Okay, again, what rookie Bruins winger scored 4 goals in the 2009 NHL Young Stars game on his way to MVP honors? Answer in the comments below. Ask some friends, have them respond, and then once you get your correct answer, we'll do a drawing and then send everybody that wins a Boston Banner Blueprint some merch.
Did you get the answer to the last trivia question?
Oh, yeah, you do got to give that answer.
I do. Why don't you go ahead?
The answer was Mike Timlin. To all that got it right.
Yeah, shout out to all 326 of you that got it right. Blew us away this week. It was tough to find the first person, but it was a lot of work. But thank you, everyone, for answering and putting in your feedback.
Yes, and so we're shooting for 327 this week. But without further ado, go ahead and like and share and comment and rate 5 stars. Follow us on @BostonBannerBP on Twitter, Boston Banner Blueprint on Facebook and Instagram. PT's been putting in the work and putting out some fire reels on all of our socials and growing that content. And so, follow us on all the socials, like 5 stars, the whole nines. But without further ado, thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode.
Yeah,
thank you guys. And be on the lookout at the end of the week. Thursday's the NBA trade deadline. We're doing a special Celtics episode. Super Bowl this Sunday. You'll get a bonus football episode this week as well. So there's a lot of content to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, exciting stuff happening on the Blueprint. So that's all from us for tonight. We'll see you guys later in the week. Peace.